And that is why, as Prime Minister, the police was completely independent and without let or hindrance or interference was able to arrest a minister of government and handle it as a police matter without the Minister of National Security even knowing, far less interfering, and the Prime Minister. I know there are a lot of people who would love to have heard it differently, that the party and the government wanted to protect the minister. Well, let me remind you people in the media who have a shorter memory than the public. There was a UNC minister, because I saw you printing that this is the first time a minister of government was arrested. Where you got that from? You were not here when Dhanraj Singh was arrested? Wasn't Dhanraj Singh a minister of government? Arrested for murder? And other charges, I presume? And you know what happened then? The UNC didn't accept the decision of the DPP to instruct the police to charge their colleague for murder. They went to court to ask the court to overturn the DPP's authority to instruct the police to charge their colleague for murder, which had its origin with Sumer Singh in the management of public monies in Mayaro. You all forget that. You forget that completely. It forms no part of the discourse. But you spent the whole weekend trying to tell the country we're in a crisis because Marlene MacDonald, who the Prime Minister had removed before, who had been cleared before on the very said matter, the Prime Minister is waiting to determine what is happening to take the action that is required. Trinidad and Tobago in a crisis and the government collapsed. So the government didn't collapse when Dhanraj Singh was arrested. The government didn't collapse when Ram Logan, the Attorney General, was fired. And Gary Griffith was fired on the same day. One for speaking the truth, one for telling lies. The government didn't collapse then. There was no panel discussion then. There was no prime ministerial judgment being called into question. No. You know why? Because in this country, we of the PNM, we know that we are different, and you know that too, and that's why you hold us to a different standard. So we expect, now that there's a PNM minister in this situation, you expect to hold us to the highest standard. But you don't hold others to that standard. And when a PNM Prime Minister says to you that we are building a new society, you know that's what you're going to get. Because for the first time in your time, or any time, white-collar criminals are now scared that something is going to happen. So those of the last kleptocracy, half of what they carry on with now is in their own defense. In their own defense. Worried like hell that for the first time, something is going to happen. And it didn't just happen by guess. Start with, you had to have policing. Policing that was resolute and putting nobody above the law. I distinctly recall this DPP telling the public that he instructed the police in an earlier time to look at a particular law in the Jacquarna matter under the Customs Act to deal with currency passage through our border in the airport. What became of that? You tell me, you're the press, you tell me. How many years it took plant-like substances to remain on the window unidentified? And how many years it took people to go to bed knowing that the prisons were a place of earnings to corrupt lawyers, UNC officials in particular, and Prison Gate will never come to a head. You had to have resolute policing in Trinidad and Tobago to begin the process of holding people accountable, especially white-collar criminals. And of course, how did we get a commissioner of police? The one that is there in office now, whose officers are carrying out this, what you want done, which is nobody being above the law and let the law take its course. How did that come about? It came about because we voted in the parliament for Gary Griffith, and the UNC voted for a continuation of Stephen Williams. Whatever that means, I won't say. I just tell you the fact. But I'll tell you more than that. The capacity of the police service to pursue white-collar criminals, be they politicians, public servants, or contractors, did not exist in Trinidad and Tobago in the eyes of the public. And that's why the cynicism was there, that nothing will happen. I gave you a commitment that we'll build that capacity. I went abroad with Minister Young and I. We spent significant time with the British and the National Crime Agency dealing with this matter. How does Trinidad and Tobago move from an area of cynicism where its police service, its agencies of state are unable to pursue white-collar criminals? And we got assistance. And that's why I'm saying that it's happening the way you want it to happen. What you're seeing here is what you expect to happen. If there's evidence of wrongdoing, it will be found by good policing and let the law take its course. And I have no doubt that this is not the end. It's the end of the beginning. Because I've said before that corruption had become a way of life in Trinidad and Tobago, and this country has to address it. And that's why I'm a little surprised that as it is being addressed, you could see that as a crisis. And all those who want to look around corner to see what's going on, and they know what's happening around the corner about the future of the PNM and the future of the government and the future of the Prime Minister, well, let them do that. I am in the least bit worried about that. Because I wasn't elected to be re-elected. I was elected to fix this country's problems. And this is one of them that's being fixed. On Monday, I've instructed the Attorney General to give you, the media, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, a comprehensive summary of what we have done and what we are doing with respect to crime fighting in this country. And crime fighting is not just murder. It is the functioning of the legal system in Trinidad and Tobago. We're not joking about this. That is how we're building the new society. Ensuring that when a matter goes to the courthouse, it doesn't start, they don't tell criminals, take me to court now, knowing that for half of their life it wouldn't happen. We have told you, we have taken steps to deal with the systems in the court. You've seen opposition to it as we do it. We've told you we've increased the number of judges, number of masters, putting new systems in place to ensure that the court processes work. In the next few weeks, we will make an announcement about how many more courts will come into being. I will take you in great detail as to what we have done to allow this country to have more criminal courts and more civil courts, to work with the more judges so that your case doesn't take 20 years if you have to have more people dealing with the matter. And we've taken serious steps to reduce backlogs and remove backlogs in the system. It is working. It will get better. It is not a crisis. It is a ray of hope. For the first time, dealing with matters that were meant to be insoluble in our society. And if you want to trust my judgment, you'll be backing a good horse. Ladies and gentlemen, I have two conversations. One with you, the media, today, and one tonight publicly at City Hall. I saw persons taking issue with the fact that I am talking to the party faithful. But let me just say something to all of those people with that point of view. It is the party faithful that got me and my colleagues into government that gave this country a chance for this to be happening in Trinidad and Tobago. The party faithful. So I make no apologies to anyone for talking to the party faithful as and when I see fit or when they want to be spoken to. All those who thought there was no hope, this is more than hope. It is happening. Any questions?
Prime Minister,
yes, sir.
The issue of Mr. Gavin Simonet, former Senator Gavin Simonet, the issue of his appointment.
His offer. He wasn't appointed. Let me tell you about that since you raised it. From the moment I took the decision to revoke Ms. McDonald's appointment, I would automatically, by duty of care, to have to deal with that. There's now a vacancy. There are a number of things I could have done. I could have taken the portfolio, I could have given it to any other minister, I could have brought somebody, a lot of things. That situation, we had an experienced lawyer in the team already in the Senate. Much of what we're doing now in public admin and going forward requires some legal appreciation if it's available. And I thought then that that would have been a useful person to fill that slot. I see a lot being said about screening. The screening process and the appointment to the cabinet, a process that you talk to people on. There's so much you can do, but when you do that, the main thread in all of it relies on you either accepting or rejecting what is said to you. You will ask questions and you will get answers. The answers may cause you to go forward or not to go forward. Go forward confidently or hesitantly. Or you may want to investigate so as to be. But that's finite. That's infinite. There's no question I can ask you which the answer will cover every possibility. There's always room for surprise. Especially when things mean different things to different people.
Was he asked specifically if he had any legal issues or any court issues, either here or overseas?
Well, you see, your disqualification is not only legal or court issues. It could be bankruptcy. It could be if you beat your wife and so on. The question is simpler than that. And the question is there any situation that involves you, which you know of, which if it becomes public, will disqualify you from being considered for this position? That covers as wide a base as you could. And some people might feel that, well, boy, if I only beat my wife once, that don't disqualify me. I might become a radio announcer and that and a columnist and so on. That's not a problem. Others will feel, I drink only on Fridays, and if my partner gives me an extra beer and I get caught on the way home, that don't disqualify me. Others would probably feel that it's infinite, anything. It means different things to different people. Hold on. Yes. So when you ask questions, you get answers. And that covers the questions you may have asked. But there's always room for things outside the question to appear. Fortunately, in this situation, it appeared before the appointment was made. And what did I do? I simply said that, well, this is not acceptable and therefore we can't go forward. And what happens after that? I've made an appointment. The vacancy has been filled by a minister of great competence. The Senate slot has been filled, and the ship of state in Trinidad and Tobago sails smoothly along. Yes, sir.
Yes, Prime Minister, isn't it time to actually have a form, like a list of, say, 10 questions? So the wife beating will be one, the bankruptcy is another, the alcohol is another, and tick the box. Because I understand the generic thing that you're relying, but isn't it time to really...
Well, let's put it this way. A form has since been prepared and will become part of our process going forward, not to protect me, the individual, but to protect the office and the party. So that we are screening now. We've just screened a lot of people. And we are learning as we go along the way. Now, we're 63 years old, but we're still learning. So before persons are made PNM candidates for the local election and going forward for all elections, a form will be signed by that person. So that if anything turns up after, you can't say, well, there was no due diligence, because that is now the fashionable phrase, no due diligence. But all the screenings that have taken place for the last 6 decades, you ask questions, you get answers, And sometimes even as you get the answer, you have to say, how do I take that answer? And sometimes, as I said, different things mean different things to different people. And sometimes you could be just plain lucky to have read it right when it was wrong.
So you are saying you are going to make changes?
I just said that. Like you don't believe me. I have a copy of the form right now. Because
the sentence that the state's mechanism.
Let me hear Fane, please.
Right. If I could go back to some of the earlier things that you said just before we get to the more recent development of Mr. Simonet, the matrix of circumstances that you had in front of you. You mentioned a number of different issues: concerns about Ms. McDonald and housing, concerns about Ms. McDonald and Calabar, concerns about her ties to someone who you identified is of particular interest to the police. Looking back at the fact that you reinstated her a third time, that question of why do that when you have said in the past that the Integrity Commission is an ineffective, unreliable body? Why stand on the exonerations from the Integrity Commission to justify that reinstatement?
Listen, you have to be in the moment, right? Otherwise you can have a great hindsight. And if what you're asking me is if I knew then what I know now, if I would have made that decision, the answer is no, I would not. Because what I know now, I didn't know then. I took you through the time frame of it. This matter was dealt with under the Manning government of 2008 and was concluded by the Integrity Commission. Whatever my view of the Integrity Commission is, in that situation, where they had done a piece of work under that government, I was not now required to go and reinvestigate that at the time of screening in 2010. Okay? What is sufficient? As I stand before you now, how many commissioners of inquiry have been before? I am Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago now. How many times have they raised suspicions about me personally? Right? And I had to go and I sat before commissions of inquiry inquiring into my conduct, where I was accused of all manner of evil. So I'm saying you have to balance it going forward. But there comes a point in time when you have a judgment call to make. The first time I removed Ms. McDonald, where I had the authority so to do, there was a series of allegations, most of which has died and found to be of no benefit to those who were making the allegation about the housing and how many houses she owned and so on. In fact, that is what really attracted my attention on that occasion, that they were saying that she owned HEC houses. You forgot that, yeah? That was one of the allegations. And that she was giving HEC, she bought an HEC house for some allegations that were quite concerning. So what did I do then? That was the first time I had a responsibility to act on Ms. McDonald. Those allegations largely turned out to be, one, not true at all about her owning houses. And I say that guardedly now because maybe tomorrow somebody might come and say that the police found that she owned houses. But in terms of determination at the time that all this housing story was not true, and that the Calabar situation, having been looked at for a second time, was found not to be worthy of further investigation. That is the situation. And let me tell you something. That is a decision made in a certain context. She was elected after the stuff 2010. We are now to form the government. She's a senior member of the government. She's offered a cabinet portfolio, which she quickly lost to facilitate an investigation. Right? You are saying that maybe enough was said around that person that the person should not have been considered. But I said then, when I brought back Ms. McDonald the last time, I said, if new information turns up, then I will act. And that did not happen until last week. Up until that point, up until the point when I brought her back the last time, the situation was such that the circumstances, the same information I had is what the Integrity Commission had. They made rulings, and the police saying, we're going to still look. And I said, fine, if you find anything, we will know, and we'll act appropriately.
But why take the risk given that that police investigation, which was endeavoring to unearth that new information, was still ongoing? Why put her in a position where she was directly in contact with taxpayers' funds, with public office, with that height of public office?
Listen, being under investigation is not an indictment, because the investigation could easily, the corollary was that it could have found nothing, especially when 2 previous investigations by a different agency, an agency which specifically, right, to deal with persons in public life, and an agency that has available to it access to the police. So don't ask me to behave as though I am the be-all and end-all in the country in making a decision like that. It is a judgment I have to make. Surely you don't agree. But I'm saying when I made it, I was satisfied that it was a reasonable decision. You don't agree? We differ on that. But I'm saying now, given the new information and the new situation, I have no difficulty in accepting that she ought not to be there. And those are the terms and conditions under which she was returned. I said, if the police comes up with anything additional and any situation warranting my intervention, I will do it. So even as I'm talking to you now, there are people under investigation for a variety of things. Being under investigation, you make a judgment on it. And that was the judgment I made.
Did you at any time speak with Mr. McDonald one-on-one about the situation? Explain this.
Good question, because that's a question too that should form part of the analysis. Yes, I spoke with Ms. McDonald on many occasions on this matter, more than one occasion. And of course, there's the little matter of cabinet government, the Westminster system, where the foundation of that is that members of the cabinet are required to be forthright with their colleagues, especially colleague number 1, the Prime Minister. That's a requirement. As a matter of fact, this morning, I had the discussion at the cabinet, not for the first time, not for the second time, not for the third time, that members of cabinet are required to be forthright and truthful to their colleagues in the conduct of public business or matters relating to their sitting around that table. I say to you, we are building a new society, and in so doing, sometimes there is pain.
So was she not forthright with you at that time?
I am not going to go any further in trying to read and spell anything for you. My words are chosen very carefully. And I said, you asked me a question which I answered very clearly. You asked me if I had spoken to her about this matter before. The Calabar matter, the other matters were completely new, never formed part of the discussion or the investigations up to Thursday as far as I was aware. Right? On the Calabar matter, yes, I spoke to her more than once about it. And I got answers when you added those, and in fact, in some cases, there were references to the matter. So it can only go so far.
So you were satisfied at the time with her answers, despite the other facts that may have...
What other facts?
The fact that the police investigation was
That
still
wasn't,
ongoing.
the police had no facts at that stage. I just told you. What you're seeing now,
Were you satisfied at the time?
at
with
the
her
time,
answers?
before the new situation developed, I was satisfied that it was a reasonable decision to make, because there was nothing in front of us which said that you are disqualified from this.
Did she assure you of her innocence?
What do you think she told me? What we talked about? Her guilt? Are you implying that she told me, yes, she was guilty of taking public money, and I told her, yes, is that what you're saying?
Were there any other
Are you
factors
implying that she told me about her guilt and I covered it up?
considered, besides
I am
the
asking you a
investigation?
question. That question you just asked me, whether she pled her innocence, are you implying that she did otherwise and I covered it up?
I'm asking a question.
What is the question?
Did she assure you of her innocence?
Yes, she did. On more than one occasion. If what?
Considered, besides the police investigation,
There were
and the
no
integrity
other.
commission?
There were no other facts.
No, any factors,
Mr. Wilson.
any political factors that you considered, such as
what?
her relations within Port of Spain South?
Certainly not. Certainly not. That does not form part of the new society. If there are costs to be paid, then we pay it and move on. If we lose a candidate in Port of Spain South, we find another one. It's as simple as that.
Prime Minister,
Having done the right thing in the removal.
Prime Minister, you referred to a package of allegations that were raised by two aspirants for the Port of Spain South seat. Are you suggesting that there may have been?
I'm not going to spend any of this valuable time in this press conference to discuss those aspirants. That is for you to do. Yes, Jules.
Just wondering, Prime Minister, you said a couple of things. You said that a senior official would have been late Sunday night, 10:30 or so, informed you. That's when you officially were informed that charges were being written up concerning Ms. McDonald and the others. One, was that person a part of the police service, the DPP's office? And the second question, is that how that is supposed to be done? That information is given in advance of something like the writing up of charges?
Listen, I am not going to tell you who spoke to me. Right? I said to you, I was spoken to by an official, that official, right, being a member of the government, and that official told me that it is now official, having been so informed that it is official, that this is taking place. So there's no conspiracy, no secrecy here. But I don't want to go telling you, X tell me and Y tell me, because let's face it, I hold the office of Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and people tell me all kind of things, even things about you. Eh? And it's not for me to go blabbing up my mouth about everything I'm told. It's for me to act reasonably. Right? And I tell you one thing though. If it is that you're not going to believe anything I tell you, then it simply means that you will have difficulty interfacing with this office. Because this office is required to act in a particular way. And that is why I couldn't just come out and say, oh, I heard from the neighbor next door that by Minister X has been so-and-so, Minister, call the President, say, fire the Minister. No, we do this in a civil and systematic way. And that's what I'm saying to you. The gist of today's press conference that there's no crisis in Trinidad and Tobago. There's no crisis. A minister of government has been alleged to have done wrong in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. The police has now found itself in a position of evidence to act against the minister. What crisis? And since the minister has to be removed, there's nobody in my government defending wrongdoing. Every comment you've heard from my colleagues is that let the law take its course. We empathize with the person. You know, as we say in the Christian religion, God loves the sinner, but he hates the sin.
I'm also wondering, Prime Minister, you talked about the issue of the party looking at its own screening process. But
well, this is not a party. This evening at 8 o'clock, this evening at 7 o'clock in City Hall, you mentioned party. We're not discussing party here. Right, I'm not responding to any party question. I mentioned, right? I had a question from Sean asking whether we will document the answers to those questions, and I told him, yes, we'll do that.
It was leading up to, if you had allowed me to ask, finish the question, Prime Minister, which was, as head of the cabinet, do state agencies such as the special branch and so on, do they get involved in the issue of, say, screening of briefs to you in terms of persons who are to be appointed?
Party screening?
No. In terms of members of cabinet. Let's say in the case of this instance, if you are...
That's easy to answer. If the special branch comes across information of national security considerations, they are required, and they do it on a daily basis. Right? National security issues, persons, agencies, local, or they report. They put a report to the Prime Minister. And on the other hand, if the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago requires any specific information about an individual from a national security perspective, then the Prime Minister could ask for that information. But you don't do it as a party business. Party screening gets information about our screening and our individuals, our nominees. No, we don't do that.
So the follow-up being then that any of those state agencies present you with any such information concerning either Ms. McDonald or Mr. Simoneff that would have warranted any concern?
No, sir. That's precisely what I was saying to you between Thursday and Sunday night, that I have no information. Maybe you didn't believe me. You might say he's Prime Minister, he must know. I've seen that too. Minister Young did bound to know, and the Prime Minister bound to know, and they lick up Marlene. And you know who's saying that? The UNC opposition. For what reason, may I ask, pray tell? No. The system worked. It worked because it was being able to be carried out within the confines of the authority of the Independent Office of Commissioner of Police, directed by the Independent Office of the DPP, where evidence is being adduced that a person acted improperly and certain actions are required to be taken. That is what the new Trinidad and Tobago should be. Replacing this thing about you could do what you want, right? And nothing will happen. And I want to say something to anyway, let me leave that for this evening.
Minister, in the past week, have you reached out or contacted Ms. McDonald on this whole issue?
I spoke to her briefly once, and that's about it. Because as I said to you, I did indicate to her that the two positions that she would hold, I would have them withdrawn. But in terms of being in police custody on Thursday, Friday, thereabouts, I said to you all up front, I have no new information. I know nothing more than you were publishing. And in fact, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I relied on what you were publishing.
So you have been prudent to be proactive to get some information. That's a senior member of the cabinet, a senior member in your party, a deputy political leader.
To get it from who?
To get it from whom? You're head of national.
Yeah, so yeah, you, so that you could run a program and say that I have been using my office as head of the National Security Council to come to the aid of a minister who was in police custody. I deprive you that.
You would need to come to the aid to find out what's going on within the party. Within
But
the
I
government.
said to the country through you, the media, that I expect that very soon, in a matter of hours, the police will come to a position and I would be informed. And at that stage, whatever questions I may have would be answered.
Prime Minister, what about the circumstances under which Ms. McDonald was arrested and held? First arrested and then held.
I have no comment to make on the police work. I leave that for the Commissioner of Police and the Minister of National Security. I have no complaints. I am not involved in that. So I don't want to entertain that conversation.
So you don't have a problem with the police coming?
I don't want at this time. I have no basis to entertain that conversation. The police is free to go towards a person of interest at any time that is convenient to the police in carrying out its duty. So I am not raising that as an issue because that's going to be another issue if I only comment upon it and I have no comment to make.
The citizens may be concerned about some of the maybe sort of haphazard way that it sounds like the special branch may get involved if they have information on someone who may be of interest to the government. Is there no way to standardize a procedure whereby, not necessarily on the party level, but from the time that someone is coming into public office, whether it's parliament, whether it's cabinet, to have some kind of background check be done so that is done before?
Of course, there are ways of doing that. In fact, larger societies that have been doing this for a long time have evolved. I mean, like in the United States, there are legal systems in place, not just arbitrary, legal systems in place where if you are going to be moving into certain offices, you literally have to go for what they call confirmations. And the confirmation is, the process of confirmation in front of the politicians is accompanied by security vettings and viewings. So they have dealt with this in that structured way. But of course, they do it openly in the political arena. In Trinidad and Tobago, that's the last place we want to go because anything dealing with a politician in this country ought not to be there. Because in the United States, the politicians screen and vet their judges. The politicians screen and judge their senior public servants. We, on the other hand, are evolving a system that they don't want the politicians anywhere near anything. So even the systems that they are using to answer your question and to give the country the satisfaction or the comfort that these people are vetted, those systems aren't available to us in the way we conduct our business. Maybe we might evolve to that over time. But even with those elaborate systems, they too have had failings. You may recall a vice president had to resign because of matters which evaded the screening process. Vice President Agnew had to resign. You understand? So there's no perfect system. there's always the possibility that something could happen. And when something happens, all I could ask of my countrymen, let us deal with it in a sane, sober, and civil way. There's no resistance to that. And the new society is calling on us to do that, but we must be assured that it will work. And that's why I'm saying to you, on this occasion, it has worked. And I expect that given the new systems in place, it will continue to work. But don't look for perfection, saying that if you do so and so, this will never happen. No. No matter how much you ring fence it, people have been known to climb through. So we will keep evolving. I just told you, based on what has happened this last week, I have already had drawn up for Balizé House a document which will be signed so that nobody could go forward as a candidate having not answered some interesting questions which will cover some bases. But you may not cover all the bases because something could ever, as we say in Tobago, you might not understand it, we say in Tobago, you never know where wind has come from to lean foul tail.
With all due respect, the system was not what prevented Governor Simonette from entering the cabinet. It was internet sleuthing that went public a few hours before.
Why do you think so?
So what I'm saying
Oh no, Tim, don't be so convinced. Right? What you know is not what I know. As Prime Minister, I happen to know a little more than you, and I keep saying this all the time. You are assuming something that is not right. And let's leave it at that.
My core question was, is there no way to formalize a special branch background check as a matter of course and procedure for every person who is taking public office?
Of course there's a way of doing that, but it has not been part of our system before, and it may very well be that the time has come for us to look at that.
The seat of Port of Spain South, are we likely to be seeing a by-election at any time, either now
Is there a vacancy in Port of Spain South now?
some people are saying on ethical grounds there could be, you know.
You see, one thing comes after the other. Until there's a vacancy in Port of Spain South, there can be no by-election. What creates a vacancy in Port of Spain South? The demise and absence of a member of parliament. Okay? So let's not jump the gun. That has not happened. That I do not know that that is happening. So let tomorrow deal with tomorrow.
So is it also in your discretion to ask her to step down?
My discretion? From where?
As political leader?
Where my discretion was, I exercise it.
Has she indicated to you she would like to stay on?
I have not raised this matter with her.
Will you?
I don't know.
Are you not concerned enough about it to raise it with her? Why not raise it with her? Or why not know that you'll raise it with her?
Listen, there are decisions that I will make, and as I make them, you'll be the first to know. Right? And in case you think that I'm doing anything unusual here, or being unethical, because I expect the pontificators to jump on that, I had a visit, I'm not saying this in the context of what we are dealing with now, in the context of what prevails in parliaments. I visited the Indian Parliament few years ago with our ambassador. And what amazed me was the number of people in the Parliament in that budget debate who were on criminal charges, including attempted murder. So don't go and say that because a person has been charged, they must resign their seat from the Parliament. That is not a standard practice in the Commonwealth. But of course, different people hold themselves to different standards. And the question is, in Trinidad and Tobago, what standards we are evolving to. And the whole question of a new society is something that we need to be focusing on. Right? Not trying to hold me responsible for something that happened in the Malian government and the Kamla Persad government. You hear it all jumping up and down, going outside in Gasparilla, jumping up and down about this collapse of the government. And the thing was happening with her as Prime Minister. The monies were moving around. It is subsequent to that this government has encouraged an environment in which the police can act without fear or favor. And nobody's above the law, being protected by the law. Nobody's going to go to court to ask the judge to interdict the DPP's action. Nobody is doing that in this government. But you're talking about Rowley and Rowley judgment. Yeah, you call my name. I'm the Prime Minister of this country and I wear that badge of honor. There is no crisis here. What you have is a strong government making changes for the better and for the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Prime Minister, one of the things concerning the charges or the allegations thereof and so on, concerning...
Joel, I think I'm going to end this press conference now. Can I tell you one thing? You see, when we had this press conference, and I allow you to come in here, all of you, and you come in, I stand up here until sometimes my feet hurt, and I answer all your questions. But I'm not going to sit here and let the press conferences become, you come in here as accredited press people, and you have imps outside putting questions to you on your phone, and I'm standing here answering even my political opponents from outside. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying, I just think that we've exhausted these questions. Okay? So if you have any new question, I will take questions on a new subject for 1 minute more. Any new questions on 1 minute more?
So can I just ask you, in retrospect,
what?
You're saying that you made a bad judgment call with respect to Ms. McDonald, no?
On hindsight, I would say yes, but at the time I only could work with the information I had. You know, you can look backwards and say, oh, this shouldn't have happened, that shouldn't have. At the time, I could only work with the information that I have. So let us not pretend that it was so. I read with great interest the charges that have been laid by the police and identify so much that was never part of this before. But you don't make that distinction because you have converted the subject not to one about persons who have done things wrong and got run afoul of the law and are now in the hands of the police. Your main interest is to see if you could pin this to the Prime Minister. I wish you luck. Good day. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.